But it's time to get to our classic review.
Yes.
The Eagle has landed.
Yes. You discovered this movie.
Yes, because the scriptwriter for this one was the director of our previous week's movie, Dragnet,
Right. Yeah.
and the premise itself was so wild that I just had to give it a go. Um,
Yeah.
uh, it's 1943. The Germans basically have already lost the war, and it's all over but the fighting. And um, and Mustache Man
Mhm.
goes along with a suggestion that someone makes to have Winston Churchill kidnapped to force a negotiated peace.
Yes. And the uh, the the one admiral who has been kind of thrust with the plan, he's just, with this idea, he's like, geez, I don't want to do this. He's, because
Yeah,
by this point, the mustache leader was well and truly out of his freaking mind. If he wasn't
yes.
before, he really was then. Um,
He went from being a dangerous ideologue to being a chemically imbalanced and deranged ideologue.
yes, yeah. Um, and so so this admiral goes to Colonel Rauld, who's played by Robert Duvall, and he looks very much like a real uh, German officer, and I'm trying to remember his name.
Yeah,
Uh,
I know who you mean, like the guy with the eye patch.
yeah, he was the basically the face of the assassination attempt on the mustache leader. Um, Klaus von Stauffenberg was his name.
Mm.
Yeah, because it's the eye patch and the prosthetic arm. But yeah, he's being basically tasked with coming up with basically saying, well, do a feasibility study, see if we can actually do it, and then the colonel, he looks into it, and then he actually sees an opportunity where, oh, we might actually be able to do this.
Right, like there's this opening. Churchill's going to be in this like lightly defended section of England for a few weeks on on a trip. So you know what?
Yeah,
Let's do this.
yeah, why not? Yeah, so he starts putting the plan together, and the commander that he wants is that's Michael Caine's character, Colonel Kurt Steiner, who he and his men are they end up serving time in a penal colony because they stop at a train yard where they witness people being taken away. Uh,
Yes, we were talking earlier about Holocaust movies.
yeah.
This is one of them in one scene.
Yes, and a girl tries to escape. They try to kill her, but then Michael Caine stops them, and he tries to put her on a train to to go somewhere else, but then they end up shooting her anyway. And Michael Caine gives some serious lip to the SS general.
This proves to be a poor choice.
Yes. Um, but it works out for Robert Duvall because he wants him to lead the kidnapping attempt, and then Duvall also recruits Donald Sutherland's character, Liam Devlin, who's a member of the IRA, and but he's not a typical IRA member.
Hmm.
He
Right,
yeah.
right. He has a code of a sort where he doesn't want to make bombs to target whoever happens to be there. He wants to fight the British Empire in a more direct way.
Right. Yeah. Um, and but they recruit him to kind of be their eyes on the ground for the early part of the plan. And So and basically then once they get to England, it takes them a little while to get to England. It's very the first part of it's pretty slow, but then of course they eventually get there, and things seem to be going well until then they don't, and
They rather dramatically don't.
yeah, they rather dramatically don't, and it you know kind of blows up in their faces, um, because in the village that they're in, about 8 miles down the road, there's a company of Army Rangers, U.S. Army Rangers up there, and the colonel who's in charge of the company is played by Larry Hagman, who
Boy, is he an idiot.
oh yeah, he is, yeah.
Yeah.
uh,
And in fact, you notice that Larry Hagman, big enough deal on the poster here that he and his character get name dropped.
yes, well, I mean, he was Major Nelson on I Dream of Jeannie, so people knew who he was.
Something of a
uh,
name, yeah.
Something of a name, yeah. And for those of you wondering, this movie came out a couple of years before Dallas aired, so that's most people remember him as J.R. Ewing on Dallas. But yeah, he kind of reminded me of uh, the Army, the Air Force general or general or colonel in that episode of The Simpsons with Sideshow Bob at the Air Force Base. It was voiced
Oh
by
yeah.
Arlie Army.
See, I was thought you were going to go with Doctor Strangelove there.
Oh, a little bit of that too, yeah. Oh, that guy, yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh yeah,
Yeah,
I remember. Oh yeah.
yeah.
Um,
But let's back up a little bit.
okay,
So we have our premise set. Like Daniel was saying, we've got a pretty dynamite cast here.
yeah,
Um, I had heard Michael Caine in some interview refer to playing a Nazi, and now I know what movie he was referring to.
yeah. Yeah, as I mentioned before when we were talking about another movie where people were just using their British accents instead of other ones. Michael Caine was just like, nah, I'm just going to use my British accent. I'm not going to use a German one.
Which is funny because okay, so this movie was made in 1973,
Uh,
75,
76.
76. Okay, for a $6 million budget apparently, which
Mm,
at the time, would have gone further, but still not a super high budget movie.
yeah,
And
yeah,
and there's little signs of it all over the place. And in fact, in one scene, there's literally a sign where they they're on this island with this was supposed to be a German island with the penal colony,
yeah.
and the pub in the background has signs in English. Oh, they have a small German sign on the wall, but
Mhm.
unless it was supposed to be an island, like a British island that the Germans had somehow occupied and turned into a penal colony, which doesn't seem likely.
No, that didn't seem likely, especially at that time, at that point in the war. Yeah.
Yeah, like maybe early on they could have captured an island, but British maintained naval supremacy the whole way through.
Mhm.
So good luck restocking that island. But
Yeah.
other details that were kind of interesting, where you could kind of tell that they were having to like explain certain things. Well, the boat that they're using.
Yeah.
Oh, that doesn't look. What kind of a strange boat is that? Oh, this is a British boat that we captured. It was dropping commandos off of Holland.
Yeah.
It's like, why? People, because we didn't have a German PT boat,
Yeah.
and we knew that somebody was going to comment on it if we showed up if we had our British PT boat in the movie. So this is why the Germans have a captured British PT boat. Shut up.
Yeah. Yes. Well, yeah, and they even did that with Michael Caine's character, where they're like, they have to explain why he has a British accent. It's like, oh
Yeah,
well, he was educated in Britain, and yeah,
not a trace of an accent. Which, not gonna lie, that is pretty convenient for this type of story, cause or
yeah,
for the type of mission he was on. But still very funny.
yeah, yeah. Um, but yeah, I thought another character I forgot to mention was the American captain, Harry Clark, he was played by Treat Williams, who was in another movie that we had reviewed some time ago. He was the villain in The Phantom.
He was better in that one.
Oh yeah,
Um,
he was. Yeah.
like in a stacked cast like this, he definitely stood out as kind of giving kind of a flat performance.
Yeah, and I don't know if that was they intentionally told him to do that, or if that was just a product of his age, because it was probably early in his career. Because
Yeah,
he was. I mean, this was 20 years before the Phantom.
what is going on out there?
Mhm.
Yeah. There is a there's a or it's like a motorized crane going by me. What with a shovel attachment? What happened in the neighbor's area that they need that?
Oh,
Apologies for the background noise, people. But
yeah.
anyway,
Wow.
um, so I would say that the start of the movie is very strong because you get some very nice scenes with some fairly subtle um, world building, so to say.
Yeah.
Like the you hear a bombing run in the background. You just get a sense of how badly off the Germans are.
Yeah. Yeah. And they had the bombing run going off, and the you know Duvall and his whatever attaché are just they're still sitting there talking like nothing was going on. Like,
Yeah, yeah. Who was in charge of the Luftwaffe again? Uh, like what was the name of the real head of the Luftwaffe?
uh, go. It wasn't Himmler, was it?
Let's find out. Goering.
Goring.
They're saying they're calculating. Goering assured us that that wouldn't happen again.
Right. Yeah. Uh,
Um, the, but uh, now I think that one thing I noticed was that they had a set of characters who were kind of how to put it. So it's weird to ask I believe this was made by a UK company. I think the primary audience for this was British,
yeah, probably.
so they
I,
kind of had to find a way to make the audience root for doesn't seem like the right term, but like to empathize with a cast of characters whose goal was to assassinate their leader or
yeah.
assassinate or kidnap their leader.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, there's a very fine line that they were walking there. It's a bit like it's kind of like the movie we did last week, Pain and Gain, where
Right,
we're like you're rooting for three guys who are just like total horrible people who are doing
right.
really bad stuff.
Yeah. So in that movie, the way they softened them up was to make them all completely stupid and over their heads. So they kind of almost gained an underdog quality, and by making their victim seem worse.
Yeah,
They didn't make them idiots in this movie, but they made a point of making sure that the primary characters um, all had motives that I think would track fairly well, like or that like a British audience could understand at the time.
yeah, yeah, and like I said, like the aforementioned scene with Michael Caine in the train yard, I think was obviously meant to give him some sympathy, like, oh, he's really not that bad of a guy,
Yeah, he's a
you know,
German officer, but he disapproves of the Holocaust, so he's good.
yeah, yeah,
We have a guy who's a IRA person, but he has principles where he doesn't just want to kill randos.
yeah, yeah, and well, and they kind of had to do that at that time as well because the IRA was very active in the 70s.
Yeah.
Yeah,
In fact, that's kind of a bold choice, if you will.
yeah,
Uh, but I think it's also like they couldn't justify having too many Germans who could blend in England, so
yeah, yeah.
they had to write an Irishman into it too.
Right, yeah, yeah. Well, they were Germans posing as Polish troops.
That too. That which I would have questioned that at one point, but I hadn't realized how many Poles had actually managed to get out of Poland and into wartime UK. So that was
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah. Um, I will say the one part of the movie that I thought was the weakest which I think you would probably agree with me, was there was a romance subplot with yeah, yeah, with Sutherland's character and yeah, the Irishman, and Molly was her name, played by Jenny Agutter, who people will remember her from Logan's Run. She was also in An American Werewolf in London. More recently, she was in the MCU. She was one of the World Council members.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I didn't know
she's
that.
actually the World Council member that Black Widow impersonates in the Winter Soldier.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but yeah, they have this whole romance subplot, and I remember I was telling my talking to my parents about this movie, and my mom kind of rightfully pointed out, well, that's in there because that was the only way they could get women to go see this movie.
Yeah, yeah, no, not wrong.
Yeah,
It, I mean, now what I will say is that it's interesting that they throw those subplots in, but it's not like you're going to have like a boat chase scene in the middle of the Sex and the City movie to keep the men interested.
that's true. Yeah,
But that's either here nor there. Yeah, yeah. That storyline felt very tacked on, and also she was way too into him too fast.
well, she was 18, 19 years
Yeah.
old. I mean,
Well, here's what I mean. Like I got the immediate attraction of the kind of older man of the world showing up and being kind of suave and clearly into her.
yeah,
Um, when she knew that he was an agent, and in fact, you see the shotgun there on the cover, and
yeah,
she shot the guy who in town who was sweet on her and was too possessive
yeah. Shot,
to
yeah,
save him.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Like that's
Yeah,
bit much.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I found that kind of unbelievable. The Now the actual execution of the like once the Michael Caine and his unit actually arrive, there you have some nice tension because they're clearly trying to keep their heads down.
mhm,
And there was a nice little detail like, okay, anytime you have a story like this, you always have to like, okay, how do they either they pull off the mission flawlessly or they get found out? How do you set it up realistically so they're found out?
yeah,
And
yeah,
in keeping with Michael Caine's like lawful good character, he's like, "Well, I refuse to be, be seen as a spy. If we get captured, I want my men to be wearing their Nazi uniforms underneath their regular uniforms."
yeah. They wanted to be treated as prisoners of war rather than as spies because yeah, POWs got treated better than spies.
Yep. One's covered by the Geneva Convention, one is not.
Yeah,
But and then in the course of things, one of them does something heroic and gets discovered.
mhm,
Uh, What's also funny is that one of the locals who is actually working with the Germans, why is she working with the Germans? Oh, well, she's from South Africa, and her parents were sent to a concentration camp during the Boer War.
yeah,
Which she said, "What do you think the Germans invented concentration camps?" Which actually is historically inaccurate in the sense that it was actually the Spanish who invented the modern concentration camp in Cuba.
yeah. Oof.
But yeah, now as far as do they manage to kidnap Churchill or not, I think that we can leave that to the audience.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's a twist at the end that I don't necessarily want to spoil.
No, because I don't think I loved this movie, but I think it is still worth a watch just for the strength of the performances and uh, a pretty neat premise.
Yeah, yeah, I think so too. Yeah, and of course, I mean, it's got Michael Caine in it. I mean,
Uh,
anything with Michael Caine is going to be top notch for the most
Right,
part.
right. It's gonna be elevated by having Michael Caine in it. Even Michael Caine towards the front end of his career.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, If I was gonna give any criticisms besides the tacked on romance plot, I think that Sutherland's character in general just didn't really work for me.
Yeah, he he kind of he has that sort of brigand quality to him, which there's a fine line between like Han Solo and I'm trying to think of a similar character that's like that but really annoying. Um, yeah, but he kind of does come across as very a little too arrogant, I think.
Yeah, there's also a couple too many scenes, and so Daniel, where did you watch this movie?
I watched it on Prime Video.
I ended up renting it because it was on Crackle, but Crackle wouldn't work on my console, so I just said, "Fine, I'll just give them the $4."
Yeah.
Um, how long was your cut of the movie?
2.25 hours.
Okay, yeah, mine was like about an hour 50. So
Hmm.
apparently, what we watched was like the restored version. Uh,
Okay.
there was like a 90-ish minute cut of the movie that was, I believe, released originally, and
Uh,
I have to wonder if that would have been a slightly better time because like the movie is very deliberate in a lot of scenes, and like there were some parts that I kept feeling could have been tightened up.
mm, yeah. Yeah, I thought so too. I think the observation I made was that it kind of felt like something Christopher Nolan would do today.
Yeah,
Like,
actually, if yeah, we found out that he was doing a remake of The Eagle Has Landed, I would not be shocked at all.
yeah, I wouldn't either. Yeah. And speaking of which, the speaking of the director, Jim Sturgis is the director, and he had done
John
a
Sturgis.
Sturgis, sorry, John Sturgis.
Yep.
He had done he directed Gunfight at the OK Corral, which was another movie we reviewed.
Hmm.
And he also did The Great Escape and The Magnificent Seven. So he had a very impressive filmography there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is available in a variety of places. If you have Amazon Prime, it's no additional cost.
Yeah.
If you have a Crackle, well, there are no Crackle subscriptions, but if you don't mind a couple of ads, Crackle has it.
Yeah. 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 It's definitely it's a kind of a forgotten movie.
Mm. Well, I mean, I only stumbled on it thanks to IMDb link chasing. So
Yeah, yeah, because when you hear about World War II, great World War II movies, this one usually doesn't get mentioned all that much. I don't think.
no. Oh, and I had been very curious if this was based on a true story. Absolutely not.
No, it wasn't. Yeah, it was actually based on a novel.
Yeah. Now, if you told me that the novel was inspired by unclassified documents of plans that were entertained but never followed through on, I would believe you, but I haven't seen anything to suggest that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, who knows? Maybe maybe the mustache leader, maybe he did kind of like, oh, let's try to kidnap Churchill, and like, he's not going to remember that tomorrow. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, like which was the premise of it is that just that somebody said, "Oh, he'll have forgotten about it by Friday," but we still have
Yeah,
to carry out the order.
right. Yeah,
Just that somebody took it seriously.
yeah. Oh, and another actor that was in the movie, if we forgot to mention, Donald Pleasance plays. He's playing Himmler. Uh, he was in. He's kind of like the most iconic James Bond villain. He was Blofeld in
Hmm.
You Only Live Twice. He's the guy that Doctor Evil's parodying,
Yeah.
and he's and most people, although I think most people also know him from the Halloween franchise. He was Doctor Loomis.
Yep.
But
And I've seen him in a variety of things over the years. I think he was in Puma Man, the really awful superhero movie that Mystery Science Theater made fun of.
oh yeah, he did a few of those movies like that where he was obviously just there for the paycheck.
Yeah.
But yeah, yeah, I would definitely recommend this movie. It's not perfect, but it's enjoyable.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I believe that is everything we had to discuss this week.
Yeah, I believe so too.